Hello and welcome to this session in which we will discuss various risks that deals with cloud computing. Now we're going to review real quick what is cloud computing. For the CPA exam, you need to know a lot about cloud computing. How does it work? What are the benefits? What are the risks? So on and so forth. Let's real quick review what are the benefits of cloud computing and what is cloud computing in general. Well, cloud computing allows a business to do what? To have access to what? To software, to storage, and other computing power, other computing services through the internet. So you don't have to own your software, you don't have to own the storage, you don't have to own the database. What you can do, basically, you can rent, and by renting means you can access those in the cloud through the internet without spending the infrastructure money on your own software, hardware, computers, so on and so forth. So this model provides organization with a flexible and scalable way to manage their IT resources. So as you grow, you can increase your cloud storage. And as you shrink, you can also reduce it. Now bear in mind, because these services are hosted by an external provider. So the cloud computing company is a third provider. Well, and you're giving them your information, you're giving them sensitive data. You're giving them access to your processes, your applications. Well, at this point, you could be exposed to risks. So it's a good thing that you're using cloud computing, but that comes with risk. And this vulnerability stems from what? Relying on third party. Now you have to rely on their network, on their system to secure and manage your information. So basically, you're giving your data, your processes, your proprietary information to a third party, because you want to use their infrastructure. Well, how well is that third party secured? Are they secured? Are they not secured? So on and so forth. And this is what we will discuss in this session, the risks that you could face if you have cloud computing. Let's go ahead and get started. Before we proceed any further, I have a public announcement about my company, farhatlectures.com.
Farhat Accounting Lectures is a supplemental educational tool that's going to help you with your CPA exam preparation as well as your accounting courses. My CPA material is aligned with your CPA review course such as Becker, Roger, Wiley, Gleam, Miles. My accounting courses are aligned with your accounting courses broken down by chapter and topics. My resources consist of lectures, multiple choice questions, true-false questions, as well as exercises. Go ahead, start your free trial today.
Now, despite its inherent risk, because you are giving the information to a third party, we can fairly say that cloud services are generally more secure than having the IT infrastructure in-house or on-premises. Why? Because the cloud computing companies, that's what they do for a living. What does that mean? It means they're supposed to host the information for other parties. Therefore, they should have strong internal control, strong protection. And it's always better because that's what they do for a living. That's their job. Your job is not to secure the data. Your job is to do your work, run your business. This heightened security stems from the fact that cloud providers must adhere to stringent security protocols. Otherwise, they lose business. They could be penalized. They have to adhere to strong procedures to comply with many regulations that we learned about, such as the General Data Protection Regulation in Europe, the HIPAA regulation, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act in the US. So they have to comply with these regulations, and as a result, you would assume they have strong internal control, strong protection. So these regulations force the cloud providers to do what? Maintain the highest security standards. And this is what you rely on. They have every incentive to protect the data, which include regular update, security patches, robust internal control. So this comprehensive approach to security often is better than your own individual company. Why? Because you may not have the resources, you may not have the know-how that a company that specializes in business does. And that's why it's better, although it's inherently risky to use a third party, it's better than safeguarding your own asset in-house. Also, third-party cloud providers undergo what we call a SOC 2 engagement, which is what? Which is an independent audit designed to evaluate and verify the cloud service provider's control mechanism. So it's not only your trust in them, they're getting a third party, an auditor, to take a look at their service provider internal control protection mechanism. And the auditor will assess the management assertion concerning their security, privacy, and confidentiality. So what does that mean? It means I'm not only trusting them, they are undergoing an audit, and that audit gives me more assurance that they're doing a good job. They're doing what they're supposed to do. Because these audits are comprehensive, and don't worry, we're going to talk about SOC reports later on. These audits are comprehensive assessment that include how well service organization control align with what we call the Cloud Security Allowance Cloud Controls Matrix, which is a framework that they compare to. And this is a framework for cloud security that outlines specific control providers should implement to ensure the security of their system is working properly. So the SOC 2 report provides detailed insight into whether the cloud provider meet established criteria. What are those criteria? The Cloud Security Alliance Cloud Control Matrix, often reassuring the company that their data is protected. Nevertheless, there are risks. So we said, they're doing their best job, they're having auditors, but there are still risks, and we need to know what are those risks. The first risk we are going to discuss is something called industry exposure. So when an organization uses cloud service, they share this cloud service with other various companies in different industries. So this shared environment lead to a phenomenon where the cyber threat or vulnerabilities specific to one industry becomes a risk to all organizations in the same cloud service. This is called cross exposures. This cross exposure happens because attackers targeting one company on the cloud can potentially exploit vulnerabilities, weaknesses that might affect the entire cloud infrastructure. And as a result, it poses a threat to other companies sharing that infrastructure, regardless of their industry or individual security measures. For example, suppose a cloud provider hosts both a financial institution and a retail company on the same infrastructure. Here's what's going to happen. The financial institution might be targeted. Why? Because the money is there. By sophisticated cyber threats, because the reward is higher, aiming at financial fraud of data. Why? Because you can steal more money from the bank. The banking sector will have more money than a retail company. If an attacker exploits vulnerabilities in the cloud provider infrastructure while targeting the bank, guess what? They expose you. The same vulnerabilities could be used to access or compromise the retail company data. Although the retail company is not the primary target, however, once you weaken that cloud service, you weaken the cloud service for everyone else that's on that infrastructure. Although you operate in a completely different industry, now you are exposed. This scenario illustrates the security and risk profile of one company can indirectly impact others because they're sharing the same cloud computing environment. So that could happen. Another risk is the cloud malware attacks. The cloud malware attacks, what they do, they inject some sort of a malware in the cloud computing environment. And in these attacks, an attacker manages to infiltrate the cloud system, inject the malware, basically on the network of remote servers used for storing, managing, and processing data. And once that malware is inside the system, once it's injected, guess what? It's going to do the following. It's going to design to steal sensitive data stored on the cloud. It might disrupt services. It might make the data unavailable or unreliable. This malware may create a backdoor for the attacker to come back later for additional access. So the danger of malware injection attacks in cloud lies in the shared nature of the cloud resources. Because once it's in there, it's just go to different industries and attack your company. They may not be attacking your company specifically, but now you are exposed. So malware introduced into the cloud can potentially affect multiple tenants. You could be one of them, customers or company, if it spreads across the shared infrastructure. For example, if an attacker injects malware into the cloud service used by many organizations for data storage, well, the malware could compromise the integrity, confidentiality, and availability of data belonging to all these organizations, not just the one initially targeted. So you're just there as a byproduct. Another risk of the cloud is compliance violation. Well, compliance risk in cloud emerges when third-party hosts or service providers fail when that third party to adhere to required security protocol and procedures necessary with regulation. What are we talking about here? Well, you are a health service provider and you need to comply with HIPAA. Or you are operating in Europe, or somehow you are covered under the General Data Protection Regulation, which safeguards personal data and privacy. Now, if the cloud provider don't comply, well, you are in trouble as well. The risk is significant because it can lead to legal penalties, financial losses, and damage to reputation for both the cloud service provider and you as the client of them. So that's another risk, compliance violation. For example, a healthcare provider using a cloud service to store patient record. They must ensure that the cloud service provider complies with HIPAA requirement. This includes ensuring that the data is encrypted, access control are in place, not everyone can access the data, audit trail are maintained if there's any changes, among other security measures. If the service provider fails to meet those standards, not only cloud-sensitive patient information are exposed, leading to potential harm to the patient themselves, well, but also you're going to have legal action by the customers against the cloud and against you. You're going to be fined and you might have some legal consequences. In essence, when the organization entrusts their data, they must be diligent. You need to ask them questions. Do your due diligence. Ask previous users if they had a good experience. Assess and monitor the providers to make sure that they're doing a good job. Failure to do so will do what? Will jeopardize the privacy and security of sensitive information and expose the organization to legal, financial, and reputational consequences, and you don't want to do that. Loss of control is another risk. And this is especially relevant for organizations that historically maintain their own IT infrastructure in-house. When the organization's data and application reside on your own premise, you have a complete control over implementing security updates, modifying configuration, responding to threat in real time, according to your own policies and preferences. Now, once you're in the cloud, these responsibilities are largely in the hands of the cloud service provider. You're no longer in control. One of the implications of this reduced control is that updates, changes to security measures, depending on how often the provider schedule those updates, schedule those maintenances. If a cloud service provider rolls out updates or make decision on a certain interval, then you have to wait for those changes to be implemented. And this can potentially delay the application of critical security patches or the adoption of enhanced security measures because you have to wait. This is when they do the update. This is when they perform the patch control, leaving the client data at an increased risk of exposure of attack. Basically, you lose control. For example, if a critical vulnerability is discovered in a software component used widely across cloud infrastructure, an organization managing its own IT could immediately prioritize and apply the necessary patches and mitigation because you're in control. You are in control of your data. However, in a cloud environment, the organization must wait for the cloud provider to assess, test, and deploy the fix. You have to wait until they make that decision. If the provider response is not quick, swift, and comprehensive, as the organization would prefer the client, this could lead the organization's data and application vulnerability for longer than acceptable time frame. So this loss of control underscores the importance for organizations to thoroughly evaluate potential cloud providers' security practices. That's why you have to ask questions before you accept that client, accept to reside in their cloud. You have to take a look at their incident report, incident response time, how long does it take, update policies before committing to their services. It also highlights the necessity of maintaining a clear communication and setting explicit service legal agreements, something called SLAs. What is those SLAs? You'll tell them, I want the update to be done, within, 24 hours, within 5 hours, regarding security responsibilities and response time. I want you to respond to my inquiries within, less than 3 hours. And usually they would have 24 over 24 maintenance. So you have to let them know what is your expectation, and you will spell it out in a service level agreement, SLAs. Loss of control is one thing, but also you have loss of data, which is the data breaches. Data breaches in the cloud environment can occur through various means, such as hacking, insider threat, or even through accidental exposure due to misconfiguring cloud storage permission. So you could also lose the data. The cloud computing could have a data breach. When a cloud computing service provider experiences a data breach, the consequences can extend to all organization. Why? Because once you are exposed, you are exposing all the companies that reside on your server, potentially leading to a loss of sensitive information, including customer data, intellectual property, or confidential business information. Also, data loss can result from technical failure or catastrophic event. A flood, a hurricane, that could happen as well. Although cloud providers implement comprehensive data backup and disaster recovery plan, no system is entirely fail-proof, and there's always a residual risk of data loss. They're supposed to do their job, but the risk is always there. Nothing is 100% data proof. So if a cloud provider suffers sophisticated cyber attacks that breach its defenses, sensitive data belonging to multiple clients could be stolen, leading to financial losses, legal ramification, and damage to reputation for both the provider and its client. Also, in an unforeseen disaster, such as a natural catastrophe, it affects the data centers hosting the cloud environment. There might be a risk of data loss if backup or recovery fail to work as expected. So this potential for data loss or exposure highlight the importance for the organization to have a comprehensive understanding of their provider security measures. Once again, you have to kind of ask them, what do you do for backup? What do you do in case of this? What do you do in case of that? It also underscores the necessity of maintaining their data protection measures such as encryption and access control, and having a robust backup strategy that include keeping critical data backup in multiple locations or with multiple providers. So in case something happened with our server, we have another location, or we have our own backup on another server with another party as a backup. Loss of visibility. Loss of visibility implies that the organization may not have a complete picture of what's going on, because you're not in charge. Without direct access to the infrastructure, it's challenging to assess vulnerabilities, monitor threat in real time. Just basically, you're just going blind and trusting that the provider is doing their job, or even understand the specific industry measure the cloud providers has in place, because they're not going to tell you everything, but you just have to trust them. Like when you fly on a plane, you trust the pilot. This situation can complicate risk management and compliance effort, as the organization must rely on the cloud provider's report and assurances to understand its security posture. You have to just trust the captain, the pilot. That's what we're saying here. For example, consider an organization that uses cloud services to store sensitive customer data. Without full visibility into how and where this data is stored, who has access to it, or how it's encrypted, the organization cannot independently verify that all the necessary security controls are in place and functioning properly. If the cloud service provider experiences a security incident, you may not be even aware of the incident specifics, extent, or impact on the data and operation until the providers share this information with you. In this scenario, highlight the importance of establishing strong, transparent relationship with the cloud providers, including clear communication channels and regular security reporting. You just have to keep in touch with them. Here, the organization again will seek to negotiate service level agreement that include provisions for regular security audit, incident reporting, and access to relevant security logs and data. You want to tell them, look, I want to take a look at stuff every once in a while. Also, adopting cloud security tools and practices such as cloud access security brokers, CASBs, can help organizations gain better visibility and control over data and application in the cloud, mitigating the risk associated with loss of direct oversight. So you may want to have access through this CASB, Cloud Access Security Brokers. They'll give you access, you see what's going on, maybe without making any changes, just to have a visibility. Also, we could have a risk when we have a multi-cloud and hybrid system. A hybrid cloud combines both on-premise and public cloud at the same time, facilitating data and application interaction. What does that mean? It means you have some data on site in your company and some on the cloud. So this is called the multi-cloud strategy. It uses services from multiple cloud providers also to avoid reliance on a single vendor. So you'll have on-premise and public services, and within public services, you rely on multiple on multiple providers? Well, what's going to happen is this. You're going to have complexities. Yes, you're going to have flexibility and you're going to reduce your risk on one provider. However, this comes with managing and securing complex environments, and this is going to pose its own significant challenges. Why? Because now you want to make sure that all these clouds are working properly. It's not only one, many of them. The integration of multiple clouds and on-premises infrastructure requires careful planning to ensure seamless operation and data flow across different platforms. You want to make sure they're communicating with each other. You want to make sure when the data from one cloud is being able to transfer to another one if necessary. Each cloud provider has its unique set of tools, security protocol, and management interfaces, making it more difficult to maintain a consistent security picture and operational efficiency across all environments. Again, you reduce your risk by diversifying, but now you're increasing the risk in managing all those multiple clouds. One of the key challenges in a hybrid or multi-cloud setup is ensuring effective cybersecurity measures are in place consistently and across all the platform. And the complexity of managing diverse environment can lead to gaps in security coverage, making it harder to detect and respond to security attacks, because you have to worry about now multiple providers. For example, if an attacker compromises one cloud environment, it may not be immediately apparent if monitoring and securing control are siloed within each cloud service, or if the company lacks a centralized security management system. So it happens in one cloud and you're not aware of it. That's another risk when you are using a hybrid or a multi-cloud strategy where you have more than one cloud provider. Theft of loss and intellectual property. That's normal. When you give your data to someone, there's a risk that they could have a data breach, and guess what? Your intellectual property is stolen. So cloud applications offer convenient and scalable solution for companies to store, access, and manage data. That's great, including sensitive and proprietary information. However, entrusting those intellectual property and other critical business to the cloud comes with the risk of theft or loss, especially if the provider don't have a robust security controls in place. Intellectual property like trade secret, patents, copyrights, and trademark represent a significant portion of the company's value and competitive edge. So if you lose those assets, that's a serious issue for you. If this information is stolen or exposed, well, the consequences can be severe for your company. This could include financial losses, damage to the company's reputation, loss of competitive edge. This is important. If you lost your proprietary data, or you lost your proprietary processes or proprietary technology, you lost your competitive edge, and you could also have legal liabilities. For example, consider a software development company that stores its source code, a highly valuable piece of intellectual property, in the cloud for ease of access and collaboration among its global development team. That's great. Now we have it in the cloud. Now we can collaborate. We can easily access. Now, if the cloud service fails to offer strong access control, encryption, and activity monitoring, an external attacker or even a malicious insider could potentially access this piece of software code and steal it. Also, if the service provider experiences a data breach, guess what? They would expose our code and we could lose our competitive edge. This risk is heightened if the cloud service does not comply with relevant data protection or industry standard, leading to potential legal implication. Also, the global nature of the cloud means the data may be stored across different jurisdictions, complicating legal protection of IP. So that's another risk when you have intellectual property. You may want to keep this in-house and have some extra protection. It's up to you, but this is the decisions that companies will have to make and the risks they will have to face when they are going into the cloud. Let's take a look at this multiple choice question from farhatlectures.com. What potential risk does the loss of control over IT infrastructure pose to organization using cloud computing service? So here is the potential risk: loss of control. Okay, let's take a look at the answers. Increase agility and scalability of resources. Now, when you have your infrastructure in the cloud, that's going to increase agility and scalability. That's not a risk. Actually, if anything, that's a benefit, not a risk. Because you can, increase the size of the data and increase your resources if your company is growing. Therefore, A is out. inability to directly manage and control cybersecurity measure. Well, this happens if you are storing your data, your software, your processes in the cloud. Well, you cannot manage and control security risk. This is part of losing control. I would say this is kind of a good answer, but let's wait. Enhance ability to comply with international data protection regulation. It doesn't enhance your ability. If anything, it reduces your ability. So that's out. Reduce operational cost for managing IT infrastructure. Cost and loss of control are not related. As we guessed, B is the inability to directly manage and control cybersecurity, is the risk of loss of control when you are using cloud computing services. What should you do now? You want to go to Farhat Lectures, look at additional MCQs. That's going to help you prepare for the CPA exam. Invest in yourself. I have thousands of MCQs that's going to help you prepare for the exam, pass the exam. Good luck, study hard, and of course, stay safe.